members of the commission. Shan Tutsui on behalf of Mahi Pono this morning. Just want to thank you for allowing me to read a brief statement. For the past several months, we've had ongoing discussions with Hui O Nā Wai and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs regarding Mahi Pono's surface water use permit application. The goal of these discussions...
Please have a little bit more volume, please?
Okay. The goal of these discussions was to arrive at a collective agreement regarding Mahi Pono's use of Nā Wai ʻEhā water. I am here to announce today that we have reached that goal. Together, the Hui, OHA, and Mahi Pono present you with a jointly accepted stipulation agreement regarding SUPA 2206. A copy of our stipulation agreement has been provided to the staff as of yesterday. The copy of this agreement contains all of the specific terms that we are proposing, but I wanted to highlight and discuss a few of them this morning. First, Mahi Pono supports and endorses the Hui and OHA's recommended IIFS. Mahi Pono believes they provide a fair and workable balance consistent with the law while allowing Mahi Pono to continue to farm in Central Maui. For Mahi Pono's permit, the total surface water allocation amount is 11.22 mgd. This amount is 28% less than the 15.65 mgd proposed by the hearing officer and several times less than the original amount requested by HCNS over a decade ago. In addition to the water allocation, I want to also emphasize Mahi Pono's commitment to transparency and irrigation efficiency. Our stipulation agreement requires Mahi Pono to install more in-stream, in-system, and on-farm measuring equipment. All of these measurements will be publicly posted, and the accuracy of these measurements will be independently verified by representatives of the Hui and OHA doing regularly scheduled visits. We will also investigate system losses in the Mahi Pono-owned sections of the ditch, and we will allocate an initial $250,000 to start addressing some of these inefficiencies. Finally, Mahi Pono's surface water allocation is non-transferable. It can only be used for agricultural purposes. This is a clear affirmation of Mahi Pono's commitment to agriculture and hopefully lays to rest some unsubstantiated fears that Mahi Pono is going to use some of this water for future development. While the specifics of this agreement are impressive, what is also remarkable about this settlement is the general idea that OHA, the Hui, and Mahi Pono could come together and put forth a good faith cooperative effort for the sake of our entire community. On behalf of Mahi Pono, I would like to thank the Hui and OHA, and specifically Hokuau, Pam, and Isaac for working diligently with us. I am very proud of what we are able to accomplish together. I want to close by saying that we truly believe that this stipulation agreement is a win on all fronts. It supports restoration of additional stream flow while also facilitating Mahi Pono's ability to farm fresh, local, and non-GMO foods. In addition to all of that, this settlement offers a promising path forward to build trust and accountability together as a community, as Mahi Pono follows through with its commitments and charts a new course for sustainable agriculture here on Maui. We urge you to approve and adopt the terms of this stipulation agreement. Mahalo.
Thank you, Shan and Mahi Pono, for that statement. We're just here to answer any questions. If there's any specific follow-up on the terms of the settlement agreement, it more or less speaks for itself. And maybe I was just going to run through a summary overview of how it's set up. Of course, there's a recitals of the background in the first several pages, and then it begins on the first part with 10 commitments on the part of the Mahi. And as Shan said, that number one starts off with Mahi Pono supports and endorses the community groups and OHA's recommended in-stream flow standards. And of course, that's detailed in our exceptions and our proposed findings, conclusions, and decision and order. And I'll discuss a little bit about that proposal today as well. And following up right after that, though, is the implementation. That's the commitment to install the system necessary for continuous comprehensive monitoring of stream flows above and below the diversion, ditch flows, as well as all that on-farm data of actual water needs, and also the use of the active alternative well setting. There's a whole bunch of other commitments, including including improvements of the ditch system, avoidance of losses, investigation of the totality of the system losses, and a commitment to remediate those. And a bunch of, I would say, loose ends from prior orders and agreements that Mahi Pono has committed to address, such as closing the low flow intake definitively on Speckles Ditch, and also even, if requested, helping with the reopening of the North Waihee ʻEhā Wai in collaboration and consultation with the community. I won't go through every single details, but it's there, and those are some of the highlights. And then part 2 talks about the agreement regarding Mahi Pono's water use permit. In a nutshell, as Shan described, it's a total of 11.22 million gallons per day, which is a substantial decrease in the amount of the proposed decision recommended for HCNS. And this is primarily based on the 2,500 gallons per acre per day standard that the Commission established in the Waihola case, and the proposed decision applies to the diversified agricultural permittees in this case. But it also provides some flexibility and some additional water if Mahi Pono fulfills several conditions. That includes all its commitments, as well as using reasonable beneficially a substantial amount of their practical alternative, Home Well 7, addressing system losses, and what have you. There's an agreement that this will be part of the permit itself, incorporate its terms and conditions of the permit. And so, very clear that Mahi Pono has pledged to abide by these conditions moving forward as a part of its entitlement to use public trust resources from the Waihe streams and rivers. We appreciate this ability to work out this agreement and stipulation with Mahi Pono, and we look forward really to the work that starts today in ensuring that these commitments are met and Mahi Pono raises the standard for a new chapter in history of agriculture in this region. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Pam Bond on behalf of OHA. It really was not that remarkable that the parties were able to work out this solution. It took a willingness to be receptive to rethinking ideas about what the needs were and receptive to the needs of the other parties. And that's what happened, and that's how this came together. As Mr. Moriwaki says, the hard work starts today. But OHA, in the meantime, looks forward to a new era of transparency and accountability, and thanks both of you and Mahi Pono.
Yeah, quick question. First, thank you very much. For the commission, it's always helpful to have some of our major stakeholders actually come up with a compromise that helps us allocate. I'm just curious, based on acceptance of the increased IFS is about 13 million gallons a day that you're recommending return to the stream more than the hearings officer. I wonder, have you talked to any other parties and how this stipulation might impact their water use involved with the Nā Wai? Or is it just really between the two?
We have not talked to the other parties. Looking through the exceptions, there was no other party that took exception to the amount that would be allocated to HCNS under the proposed agreement. And so since this amount will be less than that, we didn't think anybody else would have an interest or an objection, since nobody objected to the higher amount for HCNS.
I would notice that I think that the Wailuku Water Company was testifying against increased IFS because there wasn't enough data that was presented during the contested case.
And this agreement will make substantially more water available to meet those IIFS.
Mahalo for having courage to sit down and talk and meet with the community. I think when we were here as a commission last time, there were some questions about reopening the contested case and findings of fact. I think the commission had kind of suggested, really thinking hard about how much water you guys would need. And it seems like an excellent compromise. I also appreciate the ability of the community to monitor the transparency and reporting of water. I think that's super important. We have limited staff, and a lot of them are on the wall. So working together as a community to ensure best stewardship of Kanika Waikoa is super important. And I want to thank you folks. Diversified, non-GMO ag is something Hawaii needs, as well as more poi and kalo. So, ʻEhā Maui, thank you.
Thank you. This is a very positive development from my perspective. Anyway, I do have a question. One of the issues that remains is some of the deferred maintenance on the Wailuku water system, not only diversions and online ditches, leaky reservoirs, that sort of thing, but also operating personnel. Is there any understanding on your part as to the contribution to those deferred maintenance costs that will have to be handled and paid for by someone?
As I mentioned earlier in my statement, so we have committed about $250,000 to work on some repair maintenance issues, dealing with efficiencies on the Mahi Pono portions of the ditch system. So we are definitely going to be working with the Hui and trying to identify those priorities and then get moving on them as soon as we can.
Perhaps I wasn't clear, talking about the property and system owned and operated by Wailuku Water Company.
Probably can speak to that. Wailuku Water Company? Yeah, so I'll let them speak to the Wailuku Water Company portion.
Before I address you, I want to mahalo our young people, appeal for bringing our remembrance to where the waters of Kali are in our community. Mahalo. And mahalo to you for coming together as a community to really find ways to bridge differences in legal position as well as in actual meetings. A question for you, Shan, and I also want to commend you for the investment you're making in building efficient infrastructure. I think we understand that ag is tough as it is, let alone, and the tendency is to want to defer maintenance and investment in those things which are really going to be better for us long term because they don't produce a short term return. It's hard to get that money back. So your commitment to expending money on creating greater efficiency is really worthy, and we appreciate that. If you were to spend as much as you wanted to spend on building an efficient infrastructure, your commitment is $250,000. What would it be?
I don't know. I think we'd have to continue to try to evaluate the system. I mean, so we're committed to starting the work, and I think that's our initial commitment. But we are definitely, we're in it for the long term. And so I think for us, we look at this as a very good investment for the entire community. It's an investment in our farming operations. The more efficient we can be, the better we can utilize our natural resources. I think we all win. And so we're cognizant of that. We're very mindful. I know that this has been an ongoing issue for a long time. And so, we are here now, and hopefully, as Isaac said, we can start a new chapter and try to work on, resolving a lot of these outstanding issues.
And we also too. It appears that you not only are cutting down your need for water, but you're cutting down the acreage upon which that water will be applied. Is that correct? It's 1850 instead of 3650, or am I misreading? I hurriedly kind of looked through the stipulated agreement. Are you planting less acreage, or you're still using 3,650 acres, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, so we're committed to the full build out for ag, but part of the stipulation talks about the first half of it being planted before we can basically start looking at other additional water resources at that time.
But the target and the 11.22 is geared toward the 3,650 acres.
I believe it's actually 3,740 acres.
But not half of that. Okay, thank you.
I would like to applaud you for bringing forth this stipulated agreement. And that is today, and maybe for Pam and Isaac, what is the vision in the future looking for the communities that you represent in terms of what provisions of the water that's being allocated for your usage or your communities? I understand Mahi Pono's agricultural development, but the communities that you represented and for the water requests that you have garnered, what is the outlook and what is sort of the commitment and the use horizon for that water?
So I can try to begin to address that. First of all, just the general background of this case. The designation happened more than 10 years ago at this point, and it led to a very long process that included all these community members down to individual kuleana coming forward with evidence of their pertinent or kuleana rights, coming forward with evidence of their traditional and customary rights, and their intended uses of water from the ʻEhā, not only the existing uses that they've been able to maintain based on the limited stream flows, but also expanded uses that they've been desiring to open for a very long time. And so I want to note that through this long process, there have been community members that have actually passed on. And my general point in opening is that this has been a long process, and people have been very patient, and it seems like at the end, they will finally have an adjudication of their water rights, as well as an acknowledgement and allocation for water use permits, whether it's for domestic use. There's a lot of individual domestic users just on their garden. There are a lot of requests for existing and expanded water uses for kalo that are connected to these streams, and also uses tied with diversified agriculture and what have you. Once those permits are granted, then finally people can start beginning to move forward based on those allocations. We were talking about implementation and how we would report that and work with the community. And that's something that I think has to be an ongoing conversation, and we work out in consultation with the commission in terms of everyone coming together. Okay, what's our allocations? Manage the ʻAwais collectively. Work with the plantation diverters for those users that depend on the plantation ditch system as their sole source of supply. And that's a really key point in this region. There are people that take water directly from the streams and rivers downstream of the plantation's ditches that haven't been able to access any water yet. And then there are people that are on the plantation ditch systems that need to access their water through the plantation ditches, because that's the way it now works after 100 years of plantation sort of controlling the diversions. So I'm not sure I'm answering any questions, but I just want to set the background and then sort of how this moves forward when the community members finally get their
Well,
votes.
you're asking the commission to validate this stipulated agreement, and I guess what I'm looking for is comfort of how much upside potential that you've given your parties, that starting today, that you say that, you know, it's a great starting point, but how much of the allocation is going to be in the near term versus growth? And I want to ensure that there's proper potential for growth. You know, as the population of the community changes, I think we need to accommodate, you know, all the parties that have interests or desires to do this.
The great thing about this chapter in the ʻEhā water history is that with the transition away from the sugar plantation, and we saw this in the Waihoe ditch case, there is a lot of water to allocate here. And a very natural win-win where we can restore substantial amounts of stream flows back to the rivers and streams and accommodate a lot of off-stream uses, particularly with less thirsty crops that are appropriate, to these lands for diversified agriculture, which everyone knows uses a lot less water than sugar.
So in your dream world, how is this system going to be sustainable? Is it going to be based on Mahi Pono's managing the system? Or is your community going to participate? What's their participation in this?
I think it's going to be a collective effort. Certainly, the community members have to come together. Once finally they get their allocations, they have that allocation of water for them to use and move forward. They can come together as in the traditional system and work together to maintain their OWIs. There's even discussion of community members reconnecting their OWIs directly to the rivers and streams and not depending on the plantation ditch system. So that's the kind of conversation that we're having going forward. Mahi Pono will have to maintain its portion of the ditch system and also take care of the kuleanas that depend on that ditch system. For example, HDNS's system supplies kuleanas in South Hawaii that are solely dependent on that system for their access to water. That will have to continue in collaboration with Mahi Pono. Same thing with Wailuku Water Company. I think it's an open secret that the company is trying to sell their infrastructure, and maybe that sale is already consummated. If it goes to public hands, that's a conversation that's going to continue, whether it's the county or the state, but there has to be a collective commitment for everyone to take care of this business.
I also want to thank you for your work on this stipulation. It's quite a comprehensive one. It's very good to see you coming up with these solutions like this. I have a kind of a technical question, and that is the original proposed allocation was higher for bioenergy crops, and this one uses a water duty for diversified ag. So I assume, are you only talking about food crops in diversified ag? So no bioenergy crops? Because I mean, those are important crops too to meet our renewable energy goals. I know that some of them tend to be thirstier crops. So that's a little, that's a challenge to try to get that balance right. But your focus is on food crops. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.